And then yeah, since it's been a quieter past week for the Reign, um, normally we'd go into I like to do the storylines and talk about, different things for the upcoming season. Like what does Jordan Heidemann's year look like after kind of a frustrating year, obviously, for the team, but I know she would have liked to do more herself. But that's just off the dome. The friends over at Ride of the Valkyries posted an article. They got an exclusive interview with general manager Lesle Gallimore, who actually I went to go and look at the roster call-ups about an hour ago. Leslie was named as a recipient of the United Soccer Coaches Honor Award, the association's highest accolade. So Leslie, congratulations on that. She's the third woman to receive the honor in history. Wow, that is fascinating. Um, but yeah, the Ride of the Valkyrie folks, Susie Rance, who Belle and I know well, um, sometimes in the press bulks, um, put this article together, and there were some interesting thoughts in it. There were talk about ownership, and obviously how the sale muddied things up. I know Bella has done a piece already on that. When the sale concluded, but some things that were interesting to me, in reading it were how the Reign are focusing on adding to their coaching staff. One of the things that I highlighted was that they're looking to add a third assistant coach. They've already made a bunch of different things, improved a bunch of different things in their staff, like having their part-time video coaches. They have a full-time video coach. They're looking to add to their health and strength, staff, stuff like that. Um, I could be reading this wrong, but it seemed like Leslie said that they were close to being done with their off season in terms of, what they want to get accomplished, which I think is interesting. Um, and this is something that Bella and I have talked about between us, but the Susie mentioned the possibility of the Reign extending Lily Woodham's loan, which would, free up the roster spot if they need it. So we'll kind of look at things here. Um, the coaching staff stuff, I don't think that requires too much thought. I mean, I feel like I think it's just a net positive, right? So that would be cool. I mean, it'll be interesting to see who becomes that third assistant coach. Like, if it's someone that I know or we know, or if it's just, something Laura knows, maybe Scott knows somebody,
Maybe
so
the
on and
return
so
of Sam
forth.
Lady.
Oh God. Hey, I didn't even think about that until now. Wow. Hmm. It'll never We can share this. Yeah. The oh, I don't have the sticker anymore because the computer I put it on is busted. But when the Rain had that friendly match with Club America, they had that match at Starfire Stadium in Tukwila. And it's a tiny press box. Bella can tell you it's a tiny press box. There was like seats for four of us, and I feel like I was like up into Bella like that. It was terrible. But anyway, who else but Sam Lady is sitting directly in front of the press box? And at this time, he was part of the Houston coaching staff. So I was like, what the hell is and I felt bad because he would turn back and look at us a couple times. And I was like, oh Jesus. Anyway, so hey, that'd be fun. But this one's a little more open-ended. Them the quote about being close to done is what I find interesting. And maybe I'm reading it wrong. And I know they don't need to overhaul the roster, right? Um, but it's interesting, they bring in a Lynn Williams, which you get a goal scorer, yes. Um, to a point, I know last week Becca and I talked about the cost for that and sending over Jalen Howell and not wanting to part with her, but Leslie talked about it in that article, wanting to, check some boxes. Bringing in Cassie Miller was something they liked. Um, obviously Lynn, the goal scorer, and in that regard, and her high press, I believe was mentioned, if I'm correct. But to that point, she's only signed through the next year, so there's concern for me there. We'll go the other way. Becca, I'll start with you, and then Bella can pick up. Do you have any opinions or thoughts on sort of the idea that they're close to being done? Because I know they mentioned it, and this is a big thing that Bella and I have talked about. And I know I bumped it to you, Becca, as well. With Quinn going away in free agency, I mean, as highlighted in the article, you're kind of without a holding midfielder at this point. there's mention of the internal options, a has, maybe Olo takes that spot, but that was the thought in that article, was that maybe that would be a position they look for. What do you think about, the idea that this off season is almost done for the Reign?
Yeah, I mean, I think we might have also talked about this last time, but I'm just still a little bit stuck on the midfield. Like I don't feel like it should be completely done at this point. I do think you need some kind of holding mid position. Maybe the players you said, but it could also be beneficial to add some outside talent. I just think the midfield still needs some more work. That was kind of my main focus last time as well. So I'm a little kind of hesitant with them saying they're being done, and also kind of like you said, like looking into the future. There's definitely some players that like at some point they'll have to think about like their time will be done with the team soon, and then they'll have to figure out kind of what to do next. So like, um, I think it would be beneficial this season as well, or this off season as well, to just like start looking at those positions and like kind of see what you can get. But my definitely my main focus at the moment would be the midfield.
Yeah, I would say, I think Lou Barnes obviously isn't going to play that much longer. I think they've gone and they've got young talent and they've kind of found players who can fill in that role. I'm not as concerned about that, but I also have major concerns about the midfield. Um, we don't fully know the status of Olivia van der Yacht yet. There have been positive signs from conversations and her social media posts, but we have no clue when she's going to return to the field or what her form will be like, having not played a professional match for what will probably be like 8 months at that point. I'm not entirely sure. Um, the article suggested playing Jess Fishlock or Sam Meza deeper in the midfield, but personally, I think that hinders their best talents. And the reality for Jess in particular, and she's talked about this plenty, is she cannot cover the ground that she used to.
Mm,
She's
mm.
she's nearing 40, and you don't want her responsible for marshaling the back line as a lone six. She might kill me if she heard that I was saying she's pushing 40. Um, and that really
Jess,
leaves. Oh,
hello? No, I'm kidding. Call Jess, tell her that.
So that really it leaves Ainsley McCammon and Angharad James Turner as your most likely options at the six. I think James Turner struggled immensely with consistency, and that has been true at the other NWSL clubs she played for as well. I really like McCammon. I like her possibility, but she's still 17. She barely played after signing in the midseason. It would take time for her to adjust, and I don't think you can expect her to really make an impact immediately. The issue there, though, is that the team doesn't really have the space to sign another midfielder. Assuming Lou Barnes and Maddie Mercado resign, which is what Right of the Valkyries reported, um, they are under the roster limit until Sofia Huerta and Ryan Brown return, but they will then be, I believe, once both of them return, there'll be a player over. So they would need to make some moves. I think that's part of why extending Lily Woodham's loan could be a great idea. But if they are only planning on extending that loan 6 months, that only gives you 6 months where already Ryan Brown and Sophia Huerta are missing those months. We don't really know how long it will take Ryan Brown to return, but I would give her a couple months to return from an ACL tear. Um, so there are some issues there, and it's worth remembering with the new CBA that you cannot simply waive players to make space on the roster. The player has to consent to their contract ending. They still have to be paid the full amount of their contract, but what player wants to be wants to end their contract mid-season if that's their opportunity? So maybe, it's really important for Leslie to have conversations with players and help them find other opportunities, and that'll make them able to find space. A player that didn't get much playing time that, maybe they could find a different opportunity for is Julia Lester.
Yeah.
Obviously a defender, but we barely saw her play until the depth pool was sort of non-existent at the end of the season. So I think they really need to sign a solid holding midfielder. But the other reality is there aren't a lot of them in the NWSL. Like it is a rare position to find someone who's really good at it, and especially someone who's good at being a lone six. Even Quinn often was at their best when they played as a double six alongside an Emily Sonnet per se. So, I would a double six with Olo I think is great, but you need someone else there, and I'm not confident in James Turner or McCammon being that consistently. Maybe the team is, or maybe they're just hoping, and then they're like, oh, we can make an addition mid-season or something. But that would be the biggest area for concern for me, for sure.
Yeah. And yeah, that sort of I was just generally kind of concerned with the idea that they were done. I mean, obviously, letting some of those players go, and Leslie talked about in the article as well. I will link it. I keep mentioning it. I will link the article. I'm not trying to be an aggregator. Lord knows we all know about those fucking, oh, I said a bad word. There we go. About those aggregator accounts. Um, but all of those players that they've lost via free agency, I'm not accounting for Barnes and Mercado because as the article said, as Becca and I talked about last week, as far as I know, like, and as far as Bella knows, like, there's generally a consensus that those two are going to come back. Like, so I figure it's a matter of time, right? Um, all of those were players that they liked, right? I mean, they liked Olivia Athens and what she brought. I mean, Belle and I, we heard it in press conferences at the end of the year when she would get more playing time. They loved Laurel Ivory and what she brought. Obviously they loved Quinn, right? Like, so it was hard, but as Becca and I talked about this last week, like, if you are like committed to change, committed to getting away from whatever the hell the 24 season was, you need to say you have to. Those are tough decisions to make, and to Bella's point in talking about bringing in more players and requiring that roster spot. Like, yes, and I have extending Woodham's loan written down here, and we've already kind of touched on it. So I don't, unless either of you guys have any more you want to talk about with that loan. You do? Oh,
I
okay.
was gonna say the same thing. I think it's good to like have that option there. So
Yeah,
Yeah,
and as
I think
really
it's
quickly,
well,
sorry, I'll get out of the way. I saw you. I'm pinning it.
you don't need to get a physical pin. We're okay.
I have one though. A
Stick it
pin
in
in
your
it.
computer screen, see what happens.
Um, it's just if you have to make more tough decisions, like you said, it's not as easy, Bella, as just cutting a player. And this is entirely a different conversation. But with the new league in Canada, I wonder if it makes that easier for players to say, "Hey, I've got a different Anyway, but yes, you wanted to talk about uh Lily in that loan.
Yeah, I'll touch on the Canadian League real quick because we
Mm,
saw Nikki Stanton sign for the Vancouver
yes.
Rise, by far one of the most experienced professionals to sign up there. And the issue with the Canadian League is things are not particularly organized or professional up there yet. I think they may have pushed themselves to start that league a year earlier than they should have. And things are not particularly settled down yet. I've also heard about them lowballing some contract offers pretty consistently. So while I think it's a great idea and a great opportunity, players who are used to the NWSL and the standards of professionalism that have been established there might not want to go to a brand new league like that. Same with the USL Super League. There have been some issues with various clubs. We've seen a couple players go there and have success, so I think we'll definitely see some more players sign there as well. But I do think it's not a one for one, just because they're also pro leagues doesn't mean players are necessarily going to want to go play there. Maybe they really want win minutes and they will take that opportunity, especially if they're still getting paid their contract anyway. But it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. In terms of Woodham, excuse me, I think it would be a smart move for her and for the team. She is unlikely to get significant minutes with the Reign behind Shea Holmes, Madison Curry, Hannah Glass, even maybe Emily Mason. We haven't seen her yet, so we don't know. But she's likely to play a significant role for Wales in the Euros, and the more playing time she can get leading into that tournament, the better for Wales. And this is a massive, massive historical tournament for them. So I would imagine that playing time is a priority. She struggled in her limited NWSL minutes. You could see the potential, you could see what they were going for, you could see the idea, but I think she needs more development and experience before she can make a real impact. And it's worth noting she's only 24.
Mm,
She was signed through, I want to say, I have it here. She's only signed through this year, so they could, maybe Crystal Palace wants to buy out the rest of her contract. Maybe they want to extend her and then send her on loan for a while longer. Who knows? I think there's some opportunities there, but I think just in the short term, it makes the most sense for her personally, for Wales, and for the Reign to extend that loan, give her playing minutes elsewhere, even if it's not at Crystal Palace. Just get her minutes so that she can make the impact for Wales that they want her to, because she's a big part of that team and she will play significant minutes in that tournament.
Yeah, and that part too, I know that the article again we're referencing it, mentioned getting her those minutes ahead of, spending that time with Wales this year. So I think it makes sense. Totally off the wall and was not scripted. Obviously with that talk about the Canadian League, you know, I before, kind of learning that not so great background information, I was gonna say, does Quinn maybe look at coming play in Canada? But I'm sure they will want something that's more, reliable, and set up, right? Because I don't know at any point, obviously Laurel has gone to Kansas City, but I don't think we know about any of the other players and where they might go yet. I know a bunch of them have like posted their goodbyes to Seattle. I think Olivia posted hers today, Olivia Athens. But as far as I'm aware, I don't know about any of the other players where they might go. I thought it would have been cool if maybe that league had more, like, it was more sustainable, like there was more backing to it, more actual foundation. Quinn could go and play in Canada, right? But I don't. That doesn't sound likely, Bella, right?
I don't think backing is necessarily lacking. I just think that they've forced an entire league into a very quick turnaround.
Mm,
Um, they don't even really have PR set up. If you try and email them to get on a PR list, you can't. Their websites and their news are not updated. It's just, it's a bit of a mess. I can't really comment right now on where Quinn might be going. I don't think it'll
sure,
be in the NWSL, but it'll be interesting to see how the Canadian League pans out. I think we all want it to succeed, but they just announced it like a year and a half ago. And then the teams weren't announced until somewhere like 8 months ago. And so they have the backing of like Christine Sinclair and Diana Matheson, these really fantastic Canadian legends. And there is backing and desire there, but the rosters are kind of not, they're supposed to start playing in March. And technical staffs aren't filled out, rosters aren't filled out. So there's a lot left to be desired there. Now, I think it would be really smart for a team to offer Quinn a particularly large contract to play at home. Um, but it's hard to know which team will do that. Obviously, also I should note that there are differences between teams. Some are further along than others, some have better sort of people in charge than others. But it'll just kind of be a waiting game to wait and see. I mean, obviously Nikki Stanton already signed up there, so and she's been in the NWSL for most of its existence. She's been around for a long time. So if she's willing to play up there, there must be something that's professional enough for her. So I think it's, it's a great opportunity for players. I just don't know yet how it's going to pan out. And I think USL Super League players can at least see what the level of competition has been so far.
sure.
For the
Yeah,
Northern Super League, you just don't know. They're gonna start playing, and who knows what's gonna happen? Who knows how good the refs are gonna be? If they're, gonna have what their training facilities are like, stuff like that. It's all just up in the air.
yeah. No, I mean, at least with the Super League, it was fascinating. I know Becca and I talked about Mackenzie Weiner last week, and the Reign deciding to move on from her, with those roster decisions that happened, obviously at the end of the year. But it was funny with Spokane and the Zephyr. I think that's how you say that name. But how it was like Reign, Eastern Washington with Marley Canales and Natalie Vigiano and obviously Weiner. But then I think I don't think McKenna Carr was there. No. But there was like another there was like at least four players who had some tie to the raid, and I was like, wow, this is fascinating. Um, so yeah, no, I mean, and even the super, I think Cosette Morche was with Fort Lauderdale, I believe.
Mhm.
So I don't know, kind of interesting to see the different leagues pop up and how they might develop. But yeah, I mean, if they don't have sort of this, I don't know if structure is the right word, but if they're not as well put together, and you're a professional that's well along in your career, I'm sure you want that. That's all I've got scripted. Is there anything that either of us, there's three of us, any of us might have that wasn't touched on or that like might have come to you about what we talked about pertaining to the club? Because obviously I went a little bit further with talking about Canada.
I was reminded of one more thing about Woodham's loan. I know we kind of
Mm,
moved on from that, but just because you were referencing the article, I remember that Bill, you might touch on this, but one other like benefit to giving that roster flexibility is that the team doesn't have to get another or like secure another international roster spot right after sending one to Gotham, which I forgot about a little bit, but I was reminded of in the article. So I think just we've kind of talked about it, but like mostly just like beneficial. Um, to yeah,
yeah, no, I mean that's important. I mean, like again, Bella, we've all mentioned sort of the NWSL and what it could present. I don't know what the hell they could be doing, international wise. I don't know. I like before the reports came out from CBS about Mondesir, I didn't anticipate that. Like, I had there's a Rain fan that loves our Rain coverage. Her name is Sarah on Twitter, who was like when Anna Maria Svrnagorcevic is like closer to when she signed with the Rain, she was like Charles AMC to the Rain. I was like, that'd be cool. And it happened. And I was like, oh, I was like, how did this happen? So I don't know. Like, so that's a good point though to bring that up because yeah, if they need that, if that ends up again, this is just what Leslie told the writer about. Who knows what she's cooking up? I mean, they could have something in the wings. I was told back in early December. No, actually, it was around the 25th holiday that they had signings lined up. So we'll see. Bella, it looked like you were opening your mouth before I started speaking, so I will shut up and let you get to the thought that you had.
Yeah, I think the only thing worth mentioning again is that if they want to, say, add more attacking talent or a midfielder, they are going to have to make space. They are going to have to convince a player to be traded or to end their contract or something along those lines. Um, they've got more flexibility these first months of the season because of Ryan's injury and because of Sophia's loan, but to make any like really season-long changes, they are going to have to make some cuts. They're gonna have to get rid of more people essentially, and I think that'll hurt some fans. And it's who knows if it's even possible. So that's where I think they're a little bit hindered, but it'll be interesting to see how they how Leslie decides to maneuver that, and if she decides to maneuver it at all. They definitely will need to do some if they're, bringing Lauren and Maddie back, but just have to wait and see, unfortunately.
It took me a second there. I didn't realize you called her Lauren. I was like, who the hell are we talking about? And I'm
Sorry,
sorry. I'm just so used to
Lou.
calling. I was like, who's Lauren? Huh? Okay. Yeah, no. So that is something to watch. I mean, it makes sense too. With Leslie saying that they're probably close to done, obviously with how the roster, like you said, with how that space is. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see by this time. Uh, by the time next week we have the show. If again, I imagine we'll have Barnes Mercado to speak about, but if anything else might be cooked, because we are getting really close to training camps and stuff like that, right? So it is it's exciting because as I texted Bella yesterday, I was like, when are we going to be allowed to be at these things in person? When can we start doing this again? Because I miss the club. I really do. It's tough, being away from them because you're with them for so long from the early part of the year until, if they go on a run or they, go to the playoffs, it's you get into the deeper part. you're away for a month or two, essentially, and then you're back at it. Like the Sounders are starting training by the time this comes out. So, okay. Well, that was good. That was productive. I liked that. That was fun. And I'm excited to get this show going again with two great minds. I'm just a bald idiot who Bella has to correct very often in the press box. Becca, when we get you in there, you will see it firsthand. And me running around trying to find lunch because some of those press meals. Anyway, until we see you next time, take care of yourselves, be well, and do whatever you can to make today a great day.
Hey, Charles.
Hey, Jen.
Hey, where are you going to watch all the away games for Seattle Reign FC this year?
Away games. Well, since Rough and Tumble is the home of Circling Seattle Sports, I was thinking of coming here if that's okay with you.
I think that makes a lot of sense. See y'all here.